very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Ankur Chaudhary, and during this session we'll be covering certain important socio-economic and political issues that are in debate and currently talked about across India. Just a couple of instructions before we go ahead with the lecture. Make sure you have pen and paper ready at your hand, because this is going to be a very content heavy session, so make sure you're noting things down continuously. Secondly, as an alternative, you can take screenshots of this presentation on your PC or mobile, wherever you're viewing this lecture. Also, we're starting this lecture slightly late, 11:50, 5 minutes late. We'll have a doubt session or question and answer session, first one at 12:15, right? And then another one at 12:45, and then the last one at 1:15 at the end of the lecture, where I'll be taking all your queries. So try and keep noting down your questions as they come up, or your doubts as they come up, and ask them in these particular periods of time. I don't want to get diverted again and again throughout this lecture. Another piece of guideline is, please limit your questions or queries to the content that is related or relevant to the presentation, right? So if you have doubts from, let us say, international relations, you can ask them in a different video lecture like this one, right? So let's start with the PPT. These are the broad issues that I'll be covering during the course of this presentation. Fundamentalism, the intolerance debate which has been raging in the country since the past two and a half years now, and then a few vulnerable sections like women, SCs, STs, etc., and what the government is doing to make the situation a bit better. Let's start with fundamentalism. So try to understand fundamentalism. Now, fundamentalism is a very broad term. It includes a belief in the strict adherence to specific set of religious ideologies in reaction against what are perceived as modern heresies of secularism. Now, when you talk about fundamentalism, it is a broader term. It is not just limited to religion. It is related to caste, community, certain ideologies like Marxism as well. But when we talk about fundamentalism in India, we are mainly concerned with religious fundamentalism. So fundamentalists want the social life or religious life to exist as it is written in their respected scriptures, like for Islam, Quran, for Christians, Bible, etc. So any changes in any digresses or any changes, any divergences from those set of beliefs written in their religious text, those are considered as heresies or anti-religious, right? It is though based primarily on religion, it has extended to other dimensions as well. So in India we see casteism, fundamentalism in these three forms. First is religion, then on the basis of caste, and then on the basis of community. So a very recent example are the attacks on Sanjay Leela Bhansali for his movie Padmavati, which was being shot in Rajasthan. So the local people, they conducted some violent acts against the people in the movie, and this was based on community-based fundamentalism of Rajputs. Next, we try and understand why fundamentalism is very important in case of India. So India is the birthplace of four of the world's major religions, that is Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism. So there is a lot of religious diversity, etc. as far as India is concerned. Religious diversity and tolerance are established in the country by law and custom. So even our constitution understands that India is a very diverse country in terms of religions. So it seeks to balance these out so that there is minimum amount of conflict. To that end, the Constitution of India declares the nation to be a secular republic, that is, state does not have an official religion. For example, in Pakistan, Islam is an official religion, right? So India has no official religion or state religion as such, right? It respects the rights of people following different religious denominations and protects their rights within the fundamental rights of our constitution, right? So that is why we have the right to freedom of religion, which is given as a fundamental right under Articles 25 to 28 of our constitution. This of course is a part of part 3 of our constitution. So it protects the rights of the people, right? and it protects the right of the people to propagate their religion, to teach their religion, to accept more followers in their religion. Also, it seeks to provide them freedom to administer religious institutions on their own with no state interventions. Right now, we understand what kind of religious beliefs actually lead to fundamentalist behavior, which is inimical to the harmonious existence of society and different classes or religions of a society. Firstly, there are people who have religious beliefs which are entirely internal. So that is related to freedom of conscience of religion. So their beliefs are internal, and the scope of religion in their lives is confined to their personal space. So they have a personal relationship with God or any entity that they believe in, and these people are largely peaceful and do not have a problem if somebody else believes in some other gods or entities. The second type is a class of people which create problems related to fundamentalism. So this one is the second, base their beliefs totally on religion, which is expected set of behaviors of an adherent, right? So in the second class of people, these people want that others should also behave the way it is written in the religious scriptures. These people tend to be very weak in faith, right? Or such a personal relationship may be completely absent. So a personal relationship with God or an entity is absolutely absent in their lives. For these people, their beliefs are purely based on scriptures as they have been written in the religious texts. So these are the people who generally create problems of fundamentalism. In the recent past, we have seen a rise of Islamic fundamentalism. World over, this issue has been spoken about, and the new president of USA, Mr. Donald Trump, is also again focusing mostly on Islamic terrorism or Islamic extremism or fundamentalism. However, we have to understand that violence or terrorism as such does not have any religion. These are certain broad examples, certain prominent examples rather. So we had LTTE. This was a terrorist group active in Sri Lanka. This was a Tamil Hindu organization, right? And then Irish Republican Army, which was a Christian organization. And then in India, we had also Babbar Khalsa, which was a Sikh secessionist group. Secessionism, of course, Babbar Khalsa was fighting for a separate nationhood for the state of Punjab, right? So as such, fundamentalism or terrorism or extremism is not limited to just to Islam. Again, these are certain factual information that you must quote when such a topic is there. You get in your written ability tests or GDs. Major instances of riots. Again, 1984, we had anti-Sikh riots after the assassination of our Prime Minister, that is Indira Gandhi. As an aftermath, around 2,700 Sikhs were killed. There were allegations that even the state was, even the government of India and other governments of various states were supporting this carnage against the Sikhs of India. Next, we have in 1992, 1993, major riots broke out in Bombay. Right, this was an aftermath of the demolition of Babri Masjid in Uttar Pradesh, and as a result, around 900 people were dead from both Hindus and Muslim communities. Next, again, 2002, we had major riots in Gujarat after the Godhra train burning. So a number of Hindu saints were killed or burnt alive in this particular incident, Godhra train burning, and as a result, a lot of violence was unleashed by fundamentalist Hindu groups against the Muslims living in Gujarat, resulting in the death of around more than 1,000 people. Similarly, most recently, we had Assam riots. This was not a communal riots as such on the basis of religion, but it was communal violence between the Bodos, which are tribals, Christians and Hindu faiths, and the Muslims. So the issue took a communal turn later on, but the initial cause was basically between outsiders and insiders in Assam. Aftermath, around 77 or 80 people dead. 2013, we have Muzaffarnagar riots. This is of course in Uttar Pradesh. Cause was Hindu-Muslim community clash. Again, a large number of riots in India you would see a non-religious event would eventually be communalized and made into a religious riot. Similar was the case in Muzaffarnagar. There was a conflict between two families. This was not related to any religion as such, but again, because the conflicting families or the fighting families were from, one was from Hindu religion and other one were Muslims. So again, it took a communal turn and largely politicized by the local population, resulting into 62 deaths, 93 injured, and more than 50,000 displaced as a result. Sarath, I will not be sharing these slides, but you can definitely take screenshots of these sites for your record. Recently, across the world, not just in India, we are seeing a rise in the fundamentalist ethos or ideology. Samruddha, I'll take your questions at 12:15. Reasons for increasing fundamentalism. First one is rise of Islamic State, that is Daesh in the neighborhood. So Islamic State is now present in almost 140 countries, India being one of them. They subscribe to a very extreme ideology of Wahhabism, right? Wahhabism, and that is under Sunni Islam. They seek to establish an Islamic State or a caliphate across the world. So that is why they are influencing a large number of religious movements across the world, and we see a rise of Islamic fundamentalism across the world. Next, rise of fringe elements in the country who are vulnerable to a small, even to a small amount of indoctrination. So terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, etc., they are highly active on social media and the digital platforms like YouTube. Now they are easily able to indoctrinate or convince certain fringe elements in the society, certain smaller groups in the society, that their community is being targeted the world over. So in that sense, these fringe elements are continuously joining their cause, the cause of Islamic State or Al-Qaeda, and that is why we see a rise in fundamentalism. Next is very important, vitiated political rhetoric in the recent times. So even in the last 2014 Lok Sabha elections, there was clear division between Hindus and Muslims and other communities with respect to various political parties. Even till today, certain political parties or members of certain political parties keep making anti-Muslim or anti-Hindu remarks. So that also creates space for the rise of fundamentalism in India. Fourthly, vested interest of foreign agencies is disturbing the peaceful environment in the country. So let's look at the case of Jammu and Kashmir. So we know that ISI of Pakistan is actively involved in vitiating the environment and funding the people who are funding or supporting the people who are working against India. So to do that, they are creating divisions between Hindus and Muslims of that state. So there are certain foreign agencies also involved which are leading to the rise of fundamentalism in India. The certain measures which have been taken by the government to control fundamentalism. Next, first, they curb access to fundamentalist literature, material over the internet and otherwise. So India bans a large number of websites which spread propaganda of groups, fundamentalist group like Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, etc., so that people do not get access to this these information and get indoctrinated by them. Right? Setting up de-indoctrination facilities for certain youth returning from Middle East countries. Now, India has a lot of NRI population or diaspora living in the Middle East. Approximately 70 lakh people are situated in Middle East, 70 lakh. So when these people are returning, we are keeping a close eye on their associations and activities. We conduct certain de-indoctrination measures on them so that they do not fall into this fundamentalist trap. Thirdly, international cooperation. We are continuously signing deals with countries like USA, United Kingdom, France, etc. to share intelligence as far as terrorist activities are concerned, and basically aimed at to curb extremism in these countries which are affected by terrorism. Next, we have increasing security at important locations across the country. Right, for example, like airports, railway stations, etc. We have increased securities. Next, is very, very important. Providing a system of good governance can be the biggest tool for curbing fundamentalism. Now, the biggest cause why fundamentalist groups get support is using the plank of discrimination. That means that, for example, Muslims in India, they are economically backward when you compare to other religious groups in the nation. So if we are able to provide them good governance, with that I mean the government is very effective in the handle the problems or to solve the problems of Muslims in India, then of course there is no scope for any fundamentalist group to indoctrinate the Muslim youth. So good governance is the best tool to fight against fundamentalism. Next, another important law which is in the pipeline is the Communal Violence Bill. However, this particular bill has been under debate since a very, very long time, since 2011 now. But there has been no consensus that has been built on this particular bill, and still the bill has not been passed in the parliament. So Communal Violence Bill seeks to curb the or gives power to the center to send its forces in a particular state which has been affected by fundamental violence. So it is envisaged under the Article 355 of our Constitution. It comes into effect when law and order is not efficiently maintained by the state government. Shweta, I'll take your questions in 12:15. Please be patient. Right, so if there is a law and order situation in a particular state, then the central government is empowered to send its forces to control the situation. Next, it allows the union government to supersede the powers of state government and intervene when the state government is found wanting. So this is a very controversial aspect of this particular bill, and that is why no consensus has been built up on this particular bill, because state governments have their own police forces. The term, subject law and order is a state subject. However, this particular bill allows the central government to supersede this power of the state governments and send their police forces or other forces, paramilitary forces, in case a communal violence breaks out in the state. So this is a very controversial issue of this particular bill. It allows for joint implementation by union and state governments. Next, we try and understand what terrorism as a term is all about. It is an act intended to cause death or serious bodily harm to civilians, this is most important, or non-combatants, with the purpose of intimidating. The purpose is, of course, to instill fear and intimidation in a population, or compelling a government or an international organization to do or abstain from doing any particular act. So this is a definition given by United Nations. Three different types of terrorism that we see across the world. First is domestic terrorism, acts of violence by non-state actors. Non-state actors are the actors which are acting independent of the government. So for example, terrorist groups, right, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, etc., against domestic political opponents. Next is state terrorism or state-sponsored terrorism. These are acts of violence and intimidation done by the state or the government against its own population. So one recent example would be the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. He is bombing his own people. He has done chemical weapons attacks as well. So that is a prime example of state-sponsored terrorism or state terrorism. Next, of course, is international terrorism. This is very much in news these days. It's acts of violence by nationals of one country against the citizen or states of another country. So for example, when Pakistan supports terrorist groups against for conducting terrorist attacks in India, that is an example of international terrorism. Again, groups like Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, they conduct attacks across the world. For example, there has been a recent increase in attacks in France. So that is also an example of international terrorism. And of course, the WTC attacks of 2001, they were also an example of international terrorism. And a huge problem as far as India is concerned, that is Naxalism. The term Naxal is derived from the village Naxalbari in West Bengal, where the movement began in the late 1940s, right after our independence. Right, so Naxalites are far-right radical communists supportive of Maoist ideology. So the basic idea behind Naxalite movement is that the independence that India got in 1947, for them it was a fraud or farcical. Secondly, they say that they were poor people in India were exploited earlier by Britishers, but after 1947 now are being exploited by Indians themselves. Thirdly, they have a problem with the system as it exists. So they want to ensure a destruction or abolition of private property. They believe that as long as private property exists, exploitation of poor will continue no matter who the ruler is. So that is their basic ideology. They advocate that Indian peasants, basically poor farmers and lower class tribals, overthrow the government and upper classes through the barrel of the gun. So they also support a violent takeover, a violent revolution against the government or the state. So as of 2011, Naxalites are active across approximately 220 districts in 20 states of India, accounting for about 40% of India's area in total. This particular area is often referred to as the Red Corridor. Right? So a large number of schemes have been launched by the government against the Naxalite movement. In 2009 of February, central government announces plans for a broad coordinated operations in all affected states to plug all possible escape routes of Naxalites. Next is a very important operation which is still in operation, that is Operation Green Hunt. Is the name used by the Indian media to describe the government of India's ongoing paramilitary offensive, right, against the Naxalite rebels. So a number of paramilitary forces like CRPF, BSF, Assam Rifles, etc. are posted in the areas affected by Naxalites, and they are fighting against Naxalites. This particular operation is known as Operation Green Hunt. Now let's try and understand what Naxalism really is. Right? Naxalism is not just a law and order problem. So basically they are not just criminals who are creating law and order problems within the state. There are sometimes genuine reasons why this violence has broken out. So some genuine grievances of the rural poor are land alienation and land redistribution. Now, the Naxalite movement is very, very popular amongst the tribal population of India. Tribals, as you know, are very much, very close to the land. Sometimes they live in forests. They are totally dependent on land. They are agricultural communities or hunters and gatherers. They are totally dependent on land and totally dependent on forest for their economic activities. Now, whenever there is a large developmental project, for example, a hydropower plant or a steel plant, etc., that is planned, it resulted in the displacement of a large number of tribals and the destruction of forests. So that led to their eviction and land alienation. So this is a major grievance as far as tribals are concerned. That is why they are going towards Naxalism. Next is poor remuneration for forest produce. So these tribals, their economic activity is mainly related to the produce of the forest. For example, certain fruits, certain firewood, etc. Now, these are bought by non-tribals and they are not giving adequate money in exchange of that. Thirdly, exploitation by government officials as well as contractors and mindless prosecution for petty forest offences. So government officials are also guilty of exploiting the tribals. For example, not giving them adequate compensation or giving them compensation only after taking a bribe or harassing them, etc. So that also build up certain amount of discontent in the tribals. Secondly, the contractors, the people who are working to develop these areas, develop these projects, they have also exploited and acted violently against these tribals in trying to evict them or get the land free from them. And also mindless prosecution for petty forest offences. Again, we have to understand that the tribals their economic life or social life is very much closely related to the forest. They have been living like this for the past thousands and thousands of years. So even, let us say for an example, even if a tribal takes his cattle for grazing in a government protected forest, this is a petty offense, but they are prosecuted heavily. Next is another problem. There are very little economic activity as far as these areas are concerned, and they are suffering from unemployment, and the government has not been able to create or generate enough jobs for them in their hometowns. Yes, so very little has been directly done by the Naxalites themselves. Now the Naxalites themselves are also becoming greedy, so they are doing very little for redistribution of lands to the peasants. They are also now working against the interest of peasants. Now only a few remote and isolated pockets do they perhaps do village administration with extortion of money and levies. Now the initial ideology they have already forgotten. They've turned Naxalite movement as a business opportunity, right? So they are basically concerned with extortion of money and various illegal taxes. They have bombed certain schools, hijacking trains and buses, hence raising doubts about their motives. Now recently we have seen a decrease in Naxal activities. Now it has been attributed to the issue of demonetization, right? All their activities, of course, they were illegal. They were conducted mostly in cash. So that's why, because of demonetization of 500 and 1000 rupee notes, there has been a drastic decrease in Naxalite activities across India. Right, guys, I'll take your questions now. Samruddha, no, Jallikattu as an issue is not related to fundamentalism. Fundamentalism, as I told you, is related to the following of the social life or economic or political life as is described in the scriptures. So Jallikattu is not related to any religious scripture. That is a local tradition of the Tamil population, right? So that is a issue of traditions and culture and not fundamentalism. Rajul, very important question, how to curb Naxalism. Again, we have to ensure that we provide good governance to the tribals affected joining the Naxalite movement, right? So, the movement started because people had genuine problem of government exploiting them and not doing enough for them. We have to ensure there should be enough employment in their areas and they are not exploited by outsiders or government officials themselves. Shweta, again, that is entirely based on personal opinions. If extreme vetting is a good idea or a bad idea, right? So I personally feel it is not such a good idea, but because it will increase discontent of Muslims and it would lead to discrimination against or stereotyping of Muslims in USA, right? So that is a personal opinion. Okay, guys, rights for creation of Telangana communal rights. Samruddha, again, I'm not able to understand your question. You will have to elaborate for me, please. Saurav Kishore asks, can you give some examples of domestic political opponents? Again, this term came across when we spoke about domestic terrorism. For example, when Sikh terrorism was on the rise, they were continuously targeting the people who were against them. So those are domestic political opponents. Again, prime example would be the killing of the Chief Minister of Punjab, that is Mr. Bejan Singh, by Sikh terrorist groups. Santosh asks whether ISIS is going to be a threat for India in the coming days. Santosh, yes, ISIS is a huge threat in India. It has certain presence in India as well. A few of our misguided youths, they joined ISIS as well. So India is under a threat from ISIS. Rajul, why does the Election Commission not impose bans, heavy fines on politicians spitting communal venom? Rajul, again, you have to understand that India is a very diverse country. We cannot just wish away our problems that people should not talk about religion at all. That is not going to happen. That is not feasible. Also, a recent Supreme Court judgment has said that political leaders cannot use religion or any community-based identity to ask for votes or to ask to not vote for any other party. So there have been certain moves done in this relation, but again, in my opinion, India is such a diverse country. It is not possible to just wish these problems away. Naxalites don't believe in democracy. How can good governance work? See, Ritvik, this is a very important question. allegory or similar to what came first, chicken or the egg, right? So they do not believe in they have fallen into this particular ideology because there was poor governance in their areas, right? So if we provide them good governance, they will move away from this ideology. That is the idea. Abhinav, can a peace deal such as that done between FARC, guerrilla and Colombian government be done in India with Naxals? Again, a very important question. So FARC was a terrorist group, a far left terrorist group, pretty much like Naxalites, which was operating in Colombia, and they had a civil war almost continuing for the past 70 years. The government has now signed a peace deal with these rebels, and they have given them amnesty as well. However, the problem as far as India is concerned, is not as acute as the case was in case of Colombia. So as of now, a similar peace deal is not needed and it's not possible with the Naxalites. We are continuously making inroads into their movements. A lot of people are leaving their movements. A lot of their leaders are being arrested and killed. So as of now, the problem is contained largely and being taken care of. So no need for such drastic measures like signing a peace deal. Ashwin, as I already explained, there has been a decrease in the activities of Naxalites after demonetization because most of their working was in cash. Drishti, Naxalites, I've already explained in the previous slide, a large number of attacks they do on our paramilitary forces, military forces. They are burning schools, organizing protests, etc. See, Samrutha, you have to understand the term communal. Communal comes from community, right? That is generally used in case of India in context of religious communities. So, riots or protests or violence for creation of Telangana cannot be categorized as communal riots. Rajul, I'm not sure of any speech given by Owaisi after the Supreme Court judgment that I'm talking about. Can you please, Priyanshu asks, can you please tell me something about BCCI and Lodha committee issue? Priyanshu, please, you have to stick to the topics that we are discussing in this presentation. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere. Rajul, talk about religion. Do not say remove police and we will show you who is the boss. Rajul, this was, I think, many years ago that he said. I'm talking about the latest judgment. Santosh, whether there is any specific steps taken by Indian government like the US there, Guantanamo Bay, Funda. Okay. Santosh, again, this is as far as torture and interrogation of terrorists are concerned. Again, we have certain camps in Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, this news comes out unofficially for getting confessions from terrorists. Again, so India as a democracy does not follow that policy. Okay, any more? I don't think there are any more questions. Let's move on. Next is the issue of beef ban. Saurabh, again, a very interesting question that you ask. As far as digital transactions are concerned, the major advantages is their transparency. That is, if I want to look at the record of transactions between people, I can easily access that. That was not available in case of cash transactions. So if there is a terrorist group, and again, if India becomes a cashless economy, it will be very difficult for them to hide their activities if in case of cashless or digital transactions. Okay guys, let's move on. Next is a very important issue, that is beef ban. Certain points for supporting the beef ban: it is against the religious ethos of Hinduism, right, the main religion of the country. So approximately 80% of Indian population is Hindu. There is a special status of the cow which has been given in the Hindu religion. So that is why it is said that beef ban should be there, right? It will reduce the atrocities against animals. Of course, this is quite self-explanatory. It will lead to increase in the dairy production of India as far as milch animals are concerned. Points against beef ban: the government has no right to enter the kitchen and determine the food or dietary habits of the people. Now, Constitution of India provides certain freedoms. So if the government imposes a beef ban, that is seen as an affront to the fundamental rights of people of India. Now beef is the cheapest source of protein in the country, and we, being a malnourished country, need such cheaper sources of protein. Right? Beef was a big source of foreign exchange for the country, and India is the biggest exporter of beef in the world. This source of foreign income would dry up, and transportation of beef itself has become a punishable offense in various states. So you have seen instances of violence in states like Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Gujarat, Rajasthan, etc., when cows or their dead bodies were being transported. The ban has not been restricted only to cows, but also to buffaloes and water buffaloes, which hold no religious connotation, and there seems to be no logic in such a law. Next, we talk about intolerance debate. So in recent times, there have been various instances where the right to life has been put into question, not only by certain activities of the government, but also by various vigilante groups. So there has been a curb on the fundamental right of speech and expression in terms of intolerance. There are certain actions of the government, for example, Section 66A of the Information Technology Act. Now this section has been declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Now under this section, a lot of people were arrested because it curbs the freedom of speech over the internet and prevents users from expressing their opinions online. Moreover, the power to judge if the opinion would be detrimental to the law and order has been bestowed in the police authorities, right? So the police would decide if a particular comment on Facebook or a like on Facebook would be detrimental or not. So that is a very dangerous situation, was a very dangerous situation, and not civil or judicial authorities. On the other hand, there are certain vigilante groups like Gau Raksha Sabha or cow protection vigilantes, again, have taken upon themselves the responsibility of protecting their own beliefs and the viewpoints when they are attacked upon. Right, so that is a huge threat to the freedom of speech and expression in our country. How can freedom of speech and expression be ensured? The freedom of speech and expression can only be ensured by making individuals and society more tolerant. So in order to make the society more tolerant, our education system has to play a critical part. The education system has to be fine-tuned so that it inculcates principles of flexibility into the mind of the youth of the country. The social fabric also has to be wound so tightly so that it ignores and identifies the attempts to vitiate the peaceful environment in the society. So it's not possible only for the state to ensure that people are tolerant. Our society also has to review its moral standards, etc., so that any problems related to intolerance the society is dealing with in that very quickly. The policing also has to be improved. Again, this is the responsibility of our state. The law and order situation and the policing that has to improve so that swift action is taken to curb such attempts before it escalates and becomes a fire which would become difficult to curb in the future. So there are various stakeholders as far as containing or ensuring a tolerant society. First is the education system, then the society itself, and then as far as the government is concerned, there should be better policing. Now another important aspect which is being discussed is the ban culture, right? It is also related to curbing the freedom of speech and expression. In the recent past, there have been talks about banning things which do not fall in line with a particular orthodox school of thought. So recent examples, of course, India's Daughter, this is a book, 50 Shades of Grey, ban on beef consumption, etc. Again, this culture of banning is a huge affront to fundamental rights of freedom in our country. Next point, we talk about certain vulnerable sections in India. By vulnerable section, I mean they are sections which are easy to be exploited and are actually being exploited in the country. And broadly, we'll talk about the various constitutional provisions, constitutional bodies or governmental schemes which are there existing to protect the rights of these sections of our society. So just look at the definition. Is that part of the population which is at greater risk of falling into poverty than others. So there are various vulnerable groups or disadvantaged groups in India. Women, SC, STs, orphans, deserted children, old aged differently abled, poor migrants, sexual minorities, etc. Sexual minorities, for example, eunuchs. Right? Let's talk about the vulnerable section, that is women. So various problems faced by women in India. They are discriminated against at home. So the discrimination starts right at in the womb. So we have female feticide, right? And secondly, at the workplace. So at home, again, female feticide is an issue. Recent studies have shown that in case of poorer families in rural India, if there is a male child and a female child, the female child is fed less or given less milk or etc., something like that. The education of a female child is not of prime importance. The health of the female child is also not very important. The brother is always given a upper hand in case of rule in certain families. Secondly, at workplace, they face very different challenges. Generally, in towns or rural India, women are confined to certain stereotypical jobs, for example, as teachers, nurses, etc., and very few women working in other sectors of the economy. Next, that is the issue of sexual harassment at work. Next, if a woman is working late in office, again that becomes a problem as far as the home is concerned, because women are taking care of the house as well as handling a job. Don't get respect at home and are paid less than male counterparts doing the same job. So that is also an example of discrimination at the workplace. Now, certain important steps which were taken by the government. So a very strong law has been established, that is Protection of Women Against Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. This creates prescribes separate punishment for such offenders which harass females at the workplace. They vigorously enforce the existing legislation related to crime against women and children. So there are already existing legislations that are being enforced strictly in the country. Major examples are, of course, Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961, Child Marriage Act of 1929, Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956, and Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act in 1986, Commission of Sati Prevention Act of 1987, and Violence Against Women Prevention Act of 2005. Right? So these are certain important laws that you must quote when you talk about protections given by the government to the women in India. Next, we talk about another important vulnerable group, that is SCs and STs. Now, why are they vulnerable right today? Because they remain economically dependent, politically powerless, and culturally subjugated to so-called upper sections in the society. This impacts their overall lifestyle and many avenues like aspects like access to food, education, and health. So the situation is such that even after 68 years of independence, this chunk of population consisting of 24% of the total population enjoys control of just about 3 to 5% of the economic resources, and again they are facing a large number of human rights violations as well. Next vulnerable section are the farmers. Recent times they have been included as a vulnerable section, especially in the recent times. The reasons for farmer suicide, we saw in the recent past rising instances of farmer suicides. So the worsening situation because of drought, so that is leading to increase in the number of farmer suicides. Next is non-availability of irrigation facilities. So even till today, after so many years of independence, we have only 35% of arable land which has access to irrigation through canals, tube wells, etc. Rest 65% is totally dependent on rain. Next, farmers growing cash crops are more vulnerable to situation where water availability is less. So cash crops include cotton, etc. Now farmers who are growing these cash crops, these are very water intensive crops, they require a lot of water. Again, these are the farmers, these are the section of farmers which are most vulnerable. Next, geographical situations such as untimely rainfall or hailstorms. So due to the effects of climate change, we are seeing certain very arbitrary weather phenomena. So due to this, there is a lot of loss of farmland, loss of agriculture produce. So that is also a reason why farmers are being forced to commit suicides. Next is increasing debt on farmers combined with failure of crops leaves them with no other choice or option but to commit suicide, right? So farmers do not really have access to formal credit through formal banks in India. That is, they are financially excluded. Most of them borrow from the local money lenders. If the crop fails and they are not able to return the money, the local money lender would also commit certain violent acts to recover the money from the farmer, and due to that farmers are forced to commit suicides. These are certain important constitutional provisions which take care of vulnerable sections in the society. So for example, we'll talk about Article 15. So it prevents the state from discriminating against any citizen in India on the basis of religion, caste, gender, etc. Article 16, it allows for or it prevents the state from committing any discrimination on the basis of religion, caste, etc. in cases of public employment. Article 17 abolishes untouchability. Article 19 is related to freedom of speech and expression. Article 40 and 46 come under the directive principles of state policy and related to taking care of the vulnerable sections of the society. Similarly, Article 338, these are the constitutional provisions. Next, certain important acts or laws that have been launched. First one is Protection of Civil Rights Act of 1955. This prevents untouchability and prescribes considerable punishments for people who are practicing untouchability in India. Similarly, the SC Scheduled Caste and Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989. Next, the Person with Disability Equal Opportunities Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act. Now this new act has been passed for persons with disabilities very recently. So various bodies, agencies and efforts of the government for safeguarding vulnerable sections in India. National Commission for SCs. This is a body, of course, which reviews the status of SCs and various laws which protect the rights of SCs in the country. Next is National Commission for STs. They do the same function for scheduled tribes. These two are, of course, constitutional bodies. Next we have National Commission for Safai Karamcharis. Again, National Fund for Development of SC/STs. Tribal subplans taking care of tribal interests in the country, and certain Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowship for Scheduled Caste Students, Babu Jagjeevan Ram Chhatravas Yojana. Again, this takes care of education of SC's children in India. So before we move on, let's take your questions. Hussain asks difference between SCs and STs. SCs are when you talk about traditional society. SCs are the erstwhile untouchables in India. So they are categorized as scheduled castes. Scheduled tribes are people who have been traditionally living in forests or are very much attached to land. That is the tribals. They are categorized as scheduled tribes. Rajul asks a very important question again. How can you make SC/STs to gain respect in India? Reservation would only give money. See, Rajul, Hindu tradition as such is based on caste system. It is very difficult for us to change the mindset of the people who are discriminating against lower castes. Now this is part of our culture, this is part of our history since thousands and thousands of years. It is very difficult to change that. So a temporary measure or a shortcut measure that has been employed is to give them give reservations to SC, STs, OBCs and other categories. What that would do is ensure there is equal representation of people in education, government jobs and legislatures. There is continuous interaction between upper caste and lower caste. Again, that is expected to create a mutual understanding and reduce discrimination between these groups. Shweta asks, sir, can you elaborate on sexual minorities, notable acts for their protection? Sexual minorities are, for example, hijidas or eunuchs as they are called. Notable acts for their protection. Recently, there has been an act passed. I'm not aware of the exact name of that act, but yes, an act has been passed recognizing the rights of eunuchs, right? Providing them with reservation, providing punishment if somebody discriminates against a eunuch, and also the concept of third gender that is being introduced in various government job forms or other educational institution form. A new category has been added beyond male and female, and the third one is called others. Abhinav, again a very good question. Why creamy layer concept is not applicable in the case of SCs and STs? Now, this is applicable in case of OBCs. It is believed that OBCs in India are now relatively quite well off. So that is why the rich amongst them, they have been excluded from getting the benefits of reservation. However, there is an assumption here that SCs and STs are quite backward even as compared to the OBCs. So it does not make sense to till today to have a creamy layer concept in case of SCs and STs. So Saurav Kishore asks, sir, what is your views on last year intolerance debate when a certain number of prominent people from different societies such as journalists, writers, actors, etc. returned their awards for solidarity of Dadri lynching, but what's happening in West Bengal? None of these people are coming in front and giving such suggestions. Why? Saurabh, again, whatever I say will be my personal opinion. So again, this is related to how much a particular issue is highlighted in the media today or not, right? So Dadri lynching again was very much highlighted in the media again and created a lot of debate on intolerance. But recent West Bengal riots, due to some reason, were not really highlighted, and maybe that's why people are not really having the same kind of reaction as Dadri. Rajul, again, if somebody is an IS officer from the reserved category, he automatically gets respect. Or somebody is from an IM pass out also. So how can we abolish caste system? Now we do not need them. No one wants a Vaishya as a businessman anymore. Rajul, I'm not. This is a thinking which is permeating in this particular generation of educated youth. However, you have to understand the number of graduates in India is still just constitute only 4 or 5% of our entire population. So that is the view that you are reflecting is a very view of a very small minority in the country. Most of the nation still is in the grips of caste system as it existed in the past. Yes, Samruddha, transgenders are also under sexual minorities. Ritvik asks, does freedom of expression allow distortion of historical facts and talking negative about a community, religion through process or sect as long as it does not interfere with their working? Ritvik, again a very important point that you raise. Our constitution gives us certain rights, but these rights are not absolute. They have certain reasonable limitations. So you cannot. So even though you do have a right of freedom of expression and speech, you cannot go ahead and start abusing online or abusing a person or a community, right? So there are certain restrictions. So distortion of historical facts, yes, there might be a problem, but in case of the recent case of Sanjay Leela Bhansali and the violence against him, the reaction of people is not right. Maybe Sanjay Leela Bhansali is breaking a law or was about to break a law, but it is not the right of the people themselves to take law in their hands and punish him themselves. What they should have done is gone to the courts and complained against it. If he would have done something wrong, if he would have misused his freedom of speech and expression, then definitely our justice system would have punished him. Rajul, what is stopping us in making reservation based on income instead of caste? Okay, Rajul, very important, again a very interesting question that continuously is being asked. See, around 48 to 50% of our population is involved in agriculture. They are not subject to providing or they are not subject to any income tax, so they do not file any income tax returns. So basically we do not have any idea how much they are earning. Next, recently in the case of black money debate, only 2% of Indians by population fill their income tax returns. So we have an idea of how much Indians are earning only related to 2%. So it is very, it's quite impossible to have income as a criteria for reservations. Samruddha, can India be again reversed to Varna system and abolish caste system? Samruddha, again, I'm not a historian, but it's very difficult for a culture to make such a huge shift and abolish caste system, which has existed and evolved since so many thousands of years, right? But I do hope it can be done. Rajul, no sir, I have seen a documentary in which many IS officers quit their jobs because still people treat them like untouchable. They are differentiated. But see, these might be isolated cases. Very unlikely that an IS officer is is declared or treated as an untouchable. Maybe couple of cases here and there, maybe couple of IS officers very sensitive or more sensitive to these things, but generally no such thing really happens. Shweta sir, as it is mentioned that the main reason SC/STs are given reservation is because of economic status, wouldn't it be more useful and fair for the government to provide reservation based on economic status? Shweta, I have already answered this question. I think some of another friend asked me this question. We have no reasons, no ways to knowing the income of the people, because only 2% of Indians fill in income tax returns. Okay, Santosh, what could be the role of media to curb such social problems? Which social problems, Santosh? Which are you talking about? I'm not sure. Divya asks, sir, there must have been some deadline or thought of ending reservation at the time it started. Why are we not looking at that, or will it take more time to end that? See, Divya, again, according to recent government reports, in the general category, if we divide the entire population into various categories, general category, SC and STs. So, in general category, out of the total population, about 7% of them are graduates, right? In the SC category, that number falls down to around 2 to 3%, right? So still there is some gap which is existing, even though the reservation has been existing since the time of our independence. So maybe we need a different strategy because this one is not working, or maybe we need to continue with reservation so that this discrimination is avoided. But yes, Divya, at the time of our independence, as far as reservations in legislatures is concerned, that is Parliament and Legislative Assembly, there was a limit in the Constitution of 15 years. But it has been continuously extended by 15 years subsequently. Prabhu, yes, that is also a very important point. Approximately, if you talk about SCs and STs, they constitute about now, due to again present estimates, about 30% of our population, right? So it will be very difficult politically for a government to remove reservations. Okay, Rajul, shouldn't there be a system where you can get benefit of reservation only once, job, college? Now the privileged are being repeatedly benefit. Yes, that is also a possible solution to the problem. Samruddha, yes, very much. They are absolutely functional. Okay, any more question, guys? Okay, moving on. Next, we talk about juvenile justice. So this particular issue is now considerably outdated, but let's just very quickly go through it. So the law at the moment protects minors from being treated as adults in the court of law and from being prosecuted as adult in case of a crime. Right? This is based on the basic belief of jurisprudence that to commit a crime there should be involvement of a criminal intent. Right? But in case of an adult, that criminal intent cannot be found because of the innocence of the mind. Right? So it is related to psychological maturity. So that is why a different criminal justice system exists for minors and adults. There are certain points which support the protection of juveniles or having a separate justice system for them. Juveniles have an immature mind, a mind which cannot form a criminal intent. Acts done by them are by mistake. That is an assumption. You may or may not agree, but that is the assumption behind having a separate criminal justice system for juveniles. India is party to various international conventions, that is Convention on Child of Rights, supporting protection of minorities, which India has to honor. So this is an assumption, the first point that I made. This is an assumption made across the world. There are certain international conventions, that is UN Convention on Rights of Child. They also assume the same thing, and we have signed this particular convention. We are party to this convention, so we have to honor our commitment to this particular convention. Another very interesting point here is juvenile crimes make a very small part of the total crimes and are committed by a very small portion of the children. Right? We do not need to make a law taking away the rights of all the children for acts committed by a small portion of the population. Right? So that is also a reason why we need to have a separate law protecting the rights of juvenile criminals. Right? Opposing juvenile the juveniles who can commit such heinous crimes with full planning can be said to form a criminal intent and hence should be treated as adults. The age of maturity of children has decreased. Right? The designation of 18 years as the age at which individuals transition from childhood to adulthood can be considered somewhat arbitrary. The law present is much older. The law has been inconsistent with present times. Right? So it is said that due to larger availability of information, due to internet, children are maturing much faster these days. So the age of 18 years does not make sense now and it has to be lowered. Thirdly, various developed countries such as USA and UK have legal provisions which treat a juvenile committing heinous crimes as adults. So India has also amended its law. It may treat juveniles between the age of 16 to 18 years as adults if they commit heinous crimes like murders, rapes, etc. Lastly, the presence of provisions which would treat a juvenile act as an adult in case if heinous crimes would act as a deterrent in the minds of wayward criminals. So that is another argument related to deterrence. Then some miscellaneous topics that are important. First one, we take a very important one, that is the Kashmir issue. So I'll try to give you a broad background of what the entire issue is all about. So when the British left in 1947, the 584 princely states had three options: either join secular India, or join Muslim Pakistan, or remain independent. So Kashmir at that particular time had a very unique situation rather, not a problem. It had a Hindu ruler but a population which was largely Muslim. Right? So Hari Singh was he was the king then. So if he had joined India, he would have been his kingship would have been taken away because India had declared to be a democratic country. He would have joined Pakistan, that was consisting of Muslim population. Again, his throne would have been under threat. So he chose to remain independent. But in October 1947, Pakistan invaded Kashmir. Hari Singh asked for help from Pandit Nehru, but Pandit Nehru imposed a condition that only if you join us, we will support you. So Hari Singh then acceded to Indian Union and asked for military support. So despite military superiority, India did not use force to vacate the occupied region, but instead it approached the UN to resolve the issue. Now, when we went to the UN, again, the Indian government, Pandit Nehru, our Prime Minister, he was highly criticized, and especially after the verdict or the judgment came from the United Nations. Right? It called for three actions to be done in this sequence. Pakistan must withdraw all its troops. Next, India should withdraw the bulk of its troops except those required for law and order. Next is a very dangerous condition that they put on us, is that only thereafter, that is only when the troops have been withdrawn and peace has returned to the valley, there will be a plebiscite or a referendum held, and the wishes of Kashmiri people should be ascertained if they want to join Pakistan or India or still continue to remain independent. Since 1949, these two conditions have not been fulfilled. Again, the third condition of referendum has not, the situation has not come for this referendum to be held, and that is why the situation remains unsolved. Right? So Pakistani response, it has refused to withdraw forces, thus rendering the UN resolution null and void. It has joined major power blocks and received economic and military aid, and continue to from USA, China, etc. attacked India in 1965 and 1971. 1972, after Pakistan was defeated and Bangladesh was made independent from Pakistan, we signed a Shimla Agreement in 1972. it required all disputes between India and Pakistan to be resolved bilaterally. That is, there would be no third power or international organization intervening or interfering in the bilateral relations. It established the line of control as it exists today. Right? So Shimla Agreement was again endorsed in 1999, Lahore Declaration. Right? However, still in 1999 we saw the Kargil conflict. Right? So this is the broad issue related to Kashmir. Again, Pakistan is not interested in a stable Kashmir because it would lead to a referendum which may go against Pakistan. So that is why it sponsors another thing. Pakistan has understood that it is militarily inferior as compared to India. It will not be able to win a war using conventional means. Hence, it has adopted a strategy of proxy war by sponsoring terrorist activities in Kashmir. So the idea is to keep Kashmir unstable and so that peace does not return to the valley, and a referendum as envisaged in United Nations that is ever conducted. Right. Considering the unique situation of Kashmir at the time of independence, we had an Article 370. It consists of it provides certain special privileges in case of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Right. So Article 370 of Indian Constitution grants special autonomous status to J&K. So J&K, it has a separate constitution, a separate flag, right? Dual citizenship, etc., and so many other provisions. Right? There has been a proposal by the Modi government for abrogation or deletion of Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, removing the special privilege status of the given to Jammu and Kashmir. Next, I think we have already spoken a lot about Indian caste system. Let's just try and understand it in a more theoretical way. I'll take your questions in 2 or 3 minutes. Let me just get over with this presentation, all the topics, and then I'll take all your questions. Don't worry. I know the class is still till 1:15. I'll take your questions. I'll answer them only then will the class end. Indian caste system, it is a system of social stratification and restrictions. So a lot of restrictions which are put on the on lower caste with respect to their economic and social life. It is primarily a Hindu concept, but has proliferated in almost all other religions as well. So because Hinduism is the dominant religion in India, even the people converting to, let us say, Islam, which did not have any caste system, now Indian Muslims have a caste system. Even egalitarian religion like Sikhism, still the caste system has proliferated in Sikhism as well, right? Then another concept is that of Gotra. It refers to people who are descendants in an unbroken male line from a common male ancestor, right? Reservations, again, we've already spoken about them. It refers to policies that take caste, religion, physical disabilities or gender into consideration in an attempt to promote equal opportunity. However, opponents argue that it promotes reverse discrimination, often at the cost of merit. So these are some things that we've already discussed. The reasons behind reservation: foundational principles of democratic society. So we have affirmative action in USA for the promotion of blacks. Again, we have reservations in India to make our democracy much stronger, so that ensuring representation of all sections of society. Again, the idea is to redress imbalances due to disproportionate representation of underprivileged sections of society. So underprivileged sections are less represented in case of legislatures, education, jobs, economic opportunities, etc. So to correct that thing, we have given a policy of reservation, overcoming stereotyping, right, and promote economic and social mobility. Now, Indian caste system was very restrictive in nature. It was very restrictive in nature. So what happened? What it did was it limited the scope for lower caste people to become mobile socially. That is, to take up jobs which are not related to their castes. So the rationale behind reservation is, of course, to overcome that limitation. Again, opposition to reservation, it is discrimination in itself, since it judges people on factors which are other than their achievement. So that is the biggest problem against argument against reservation. Secondly, it may increase racial tensions as it hinders reconciliation and replaces old wrongs with new wrongs, right? Next, as the point that has been raised by one of you earlier, it benefits the more privileged people within the minority groups at the expense of the least fortunate within the majority groups, right? So more affluent people from these communities, they are benefited disproportionately. However, the weaker sections in majority or general category, they are not helped at all, right? It has been in debate in the recent times, benefits being usurped by more privileged sections, right? Again, one of the questions, this is something that one of you has already asked: should economic backwardness be the primary criteria to gauge disadvantage? Yes, that is a question that remains to be answered. Economic criteria logically is the should be the criteria on the basis of which reservations should be given. However, operationally, as I said earlier, it is very difficult to gauge the actual income of Indians. Benefits of reservation should be restricted in terms of quality and quantity. Again, a point that has been raised by one of you, that in a family only one person can avail the benefit of reservation, right? Again, the issue is that of more groups to be included for political mileage. For example, Gujars in Rajasthan, and also Patidar, they had organized huge protests in Gujarat for reservation, and today itself the second wave of Jat agitation has started in Haryana. So this is reservation as such is becoming more of a political issue rather than focusing on uplifting the vulnerable sections of India. Guys, so we've come to the end of the presentation. I'll be glad to take your questions now. Ritvik, again, a very important point, but not related to the topics that we've discussed. You asked this question when we have a session on international relations, please. Rajul, we are forcing primary education. We made it compulsory for the children between the ages of 6 to 14 years under Right to Education Act. Rajul, if the child is not coming to school, it is the duty of the guardian or the parent to ensure that the child is in school. Otherwise, the guardian or the parent is liable to get punished. Saurabh is asking, what are the problems that are coming to pass a resolution of Article 370 in G&K, and why it should be passed or not passed? Saurabh, you'll have to clarify. I'm not able to understand your questions. Rajul, yes, it is a punishable offence if you are employing somebody under the age of 14 years, and a parent or a guardian is also can be punished if he or she is not ensuring that the child is going to the school. Shweta asks, are there any centers for juveniles who commit heinous acts so that they can be taught about right from wrong? Yes, of course. There are juvenile detention centers where these juveniles are kept. They are not like your traditional jails. They are taught vocational skills. They are given economic support, and again certain lessons also in moral behavior also imparted to them. And the next part of the question is, and if the juvenile is working under someone older than him and committing crimes, is there any committee to offer them protection? See, there are no special protection given to juveniles who are influenced by the elders to commit a crime. When somebody is committing a crime, everyone is equally complicit and liable to be punished. So no special protection in case the crime has been done in the influence of much older person. Why J&K government is not taking interest to pass a resolution on Article 370? Saurabh, if I'm able to understand your question correctly, of course Jammu and Kashmir has a very separate, has a very unique problem because of the issues that we discussed earlier. Jammu and Kashmir legislature will definitely not pass a resolution for the abolition of Article 370 because they are enjoying considerable powers in case due to Article 370. It is the central government which is initiating the abolition of the issue of abolition of Article 370 and not the J&K government. They are not interested in doing so. Rajul, don't you think we have lost much by trying to make Kashmir part of India, the country? The revenue is less than expenditure. Don't you think we should have agreed with Gandhi and given it to Pakistan? Then we would not be facing terrorism and many problems. Again, Rajul, this is a very emotive issue and a very sensitive and a political issue. My personal opinion is the strategic importance of Jammu and Kashmir is very important. If Jammu and Kashmir becomes as per your proposal, if it becomes a part of Pakistan, then China and Pakistan would become continuous, and if there is a war, we can possibly face two hostile neighbors in one go. Historically, again, Jammu and Kashmir has been a part of India, right? So if we let go of one particular state so easily, then we face problems elsewhere also. China is claiming Arunachal Pradesh. So what do we do on that? So this way, we'll keep on losing on important areas inhabited by Indians in that sense. But of course, the costs of fighting for Kashmir, they are very high, and the issue has to be resolved very soon. Kirti, sir, instead of reservation, why isn't government planning only to give financial aid to the needy rather than deploying people of higher caste from I think you mean depriving higher caste from equal opportunities? Are the government is supporting discrimination among its citizens? Again, that is the point which is to be debated. See, discrimination on the basis of caste has many aspects. It's not just economic deprivation, it is related to political deprivation as well. It is related to social deprivation as well. Social deprivation, I mean social discrimination, right? Even in villages of India today, there are separate temples, separate wells for Dalits in India. So if only providing financial aid to such people who are discriminated against, it will not solve the purpose, right? That social discrimination will continue to exist. The idea behind reservation is to get them jobs, get them education, get them interacting with the with the upper caste, so-called upper castes, so that those social boundaries are also removed. Rajul, let's not get into that. Historically, Afghanistan, Iran also, they were part of India, right? Under the Mughal rule or under the Mauryan rule. So let's not get into that aspect. Abhinav asked, tomorrow same happens in Punjab, then would we give up Punjab also? Should we fight for our land and people? But you see, it is very unlikely to, let's not generalize here that same problem might happen in Punjab, Haryana, etc., etc. Should we give them also? Rajul, why is local of Kashmir supporting Pakistani people? Are we not forcing them to be part of India? Rajul, again, that is a very debatable issue of how many people actually want to become part of Pakistan. The fault lies in our political leaders, somewhat with our media also, because we are portraying them to be so. It is very there has been no official study of how many people want to go to Pakistan, want to remain in India, right? So that is something which is undecided as of now. Ritvik, plebiscite and the condition provided in UN Resolution 1949 was first demilitarization of Jammu and Kashmir, and only then can we think about doing a plebiscite, right? So when first condition is not met, the second step cannot be taken. Any more question, guys, before we end the session? Yes, Ashwin, yes, your query remained unanswered. Naxalites is a name given to a Maoist movement which started in India, right? Their ideologies of Naxalites and Maoists is the same, right? But it is the term Naxalite comes from where the movement started, that is Naxalbari, a village in West Bengal, but the ideology is the same. Santosh is asking why Indian Supreme Court is not taking harsh decisions on people like Kanhaiya Kumar. Santosh, again, you have to understand there is a right of freedom of speech and expression. He is entitled to his views, whether you like them or not, right? But again, he cannot speak anti-national words, and Supreme Court directly cannot intervene. The process has to go through the proper legal channels. Guys, any more questions? Okay, I see Rajul is typing. So, I mean, in general category, certain people need support. How to ensure the needy get the benefits? So, Rajul, eventually, I'm not sure how it will happen. Eventually, we'll have to look at socio-economic criteria for providing reservations or benefits. I'm again not sure how it will happen, but ideally, in my opinion, that is how it should work. Yes, digitization is also an option here, because your bank account, your Aadhaar card, and your mobile phones, they are connected, right? So we can probably transfer them financial benefits. For example, through a recent idea which has been discussed, that is universal basic income. Yes, that's what I'm talking about, Jam Trinity. Right, guys? I guess all your questions are answered. Most of you have left already. Okay, thank you so much. I hope this session was helpful to you. Keep studying, keep working hard. I'm sure you'll get into your dream colleges. Thank you so much.